Welcome back, everyone. It has finally happened. We have reached the end of Howling Week, the final film in the Howling franchise, as of this recording at least.
Can I
Um,
get a? Ah!
the Discord noise gated at least half of that.
Discord
Half of
said,
that
"No, you don't
awoo.
get a howl."
Discord said, "Don't awoo, $200 fine." Um,
Discord said, "We don't accept werewolf groups onto our servers."
um, yeah, I am Evelyn. I'm joined once again by Aaron.
Hello, it's me, Aaron.
Yay.
I'm excited to be here. Yeah, this one, honestly, I can't wait. I'm really excited to talk about this one.
Yeah, I honestly I liked this one. I was surprised that I liked this one as much as I did.
Okay,
Um
I didn't hate it either. I was hard on. I didn't hard it on Letterboxd because I was hard on some aspects
mm,
that we'll get to.
yeah. Yeah, I think we've yeah.
And I chose to be hard on them because I feel like I have to acknowledge this at the very beginning of the movie.
You know what? That's fair.
I was a Ned's declassified school survival guide kid. I literally, it's like I grew up with Disney Channel shows and stuff like that, but like Ned's Declassified was one of my favorite ones from like that era, and it was like Nickelodeon,
Mhm.
I believe. And Mose, like the actress who plays the lead woman, this you could tell this is like her first adult role post
Yeah.
Ned's Declassified. And so like I honestly I almost feel like she's like a sibling to me in that we went through puberty together. You know what I mean?
Okay, yeah.
And like there are like some episodes, right? There's this one episode where she's having a lot of anger because I think it's like related to her PMSing and everything. So she
Oh.
has to listen to all this classical music for class, and she plays volleyball. So she just listens to this like really intense classical music score while she's playing volleyball. And it's just like her like hitting people with the it's so good. I just love Nick Dead's Declassified. And I love Mose.
I
And
I
that is the lead actress in this. So I was
yeah.
very protective
I
of her.
I did not know this deep Aaron lore. Like you mentioned you watched the show, but I did not know it held that like significance.
I loved it. There was another episode and it was about like itching on your private parts. And like by the end of the episode, like everyone is like covered in baby powder.
Oh. I
It
I I love
was
that
just so real.
I love that this show had this like what's that book? What's Happening to My Body?
Yes!
Like
Oh my god, the Carrie keeping of you.
yeah.
It's like I think it was because it was Nickelodeon. It was kind of like that Mr. Meaty era also. But
Mm.
I think on the whole, Nickelodeon is a little bit more surreal. Like it's like a little bit more it's still a kids show, so like me saying it's a little more hard than
Yeah,
like a
well
Disney Channel. It's like a more, I guess, like
yeah, they're not Disney.
yeah. Even like I think like SpongeBob and like Rocko's Modern Life and all of those stuff that kind of came out of the same. You kind of see a trend with like kind of weird or like kind of like
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like DreamWorks how I've talked about
hmm,
in our animation class. We talked about how like a lot of DreamWorks movies like they're still family friendly, but they push the envelope just a teeny bit more because they're not Disney, and they're like, we're not Disney, so we can be we don't have to be as hard line about what is and isn't permissible.
yeah. That's a really great way to put it. So yeah,
But yeah,
I had to say that going into this. So that's why
yeah,
I'm a little harder on it than
that
in some
makes
out areas.
yeah. I'm trying to think. I've probably got shows like that. Oh, you know what? I had that with Arrow, because
Oh,
I before it was revealed just how much of a horrible person he was, I was really into a lot of Joss Whedon shows,
yeah.
and
I really like Dollhouse. I felt that.
one of those shows was Firefly. And in Firefly, Summer Glau is, I think her character River, she's like a traumatized like 13-year-old girl with psychic powers or whatever. And I watched an episode of Arrow where she was like a villain character, but she's like she's like an adult woman that the main character sleeps with. And I was just like screaming the entire time because I'm like, you can't do that.
You're like, what are you doing?
So you know what? I know exactly what you're talking about now.
Yeah. But one thing, okay, I also really love how this film, we've heard a lot about Y2K in the cultural conscious.
Oh, yeah, I was just about to, yeah.
This is 2010, 2010.
Yeah.
The overall objective worst of all the generation. No, I'm just kidding. In terms of fashion, that's specifically what I was discussing. But I think this film should have a comeback. I think this film might have a comeback because I feel that's next on the trend cycle.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because I had an out-of-body experience. We're getting, like, ahead of things, but, because this movie deals with a kid who is graduating high school in 2011. And do you know who else graduated high school in 2011? Me. And, like, something about that, like, I had this moment where I was like, I was literally one of the kids, like, in this high school. And that was just a weird, like realization moment for me of, like, the passage of time and everything.
Yeah, I get, like, nostalgic for certain things, like, in the 90s and in the, like, Y2K era and stuff. I definitely grew up around that. But, like, this film for sure was like, oh, I lived this.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's the thing, because, like, I talked about, like, even the fact I liked this movie was surprising, because I'm like, I hated the 2010s when I lived through them. Why am I feeling nostalgic for them now?
Literally, that's exactly how I felt too. That's so funny.
But yeah, so yeah, the Howling franchise, after, I think it was 95 that the last movie came out, and they kind of coasted. I think we mentioned after the movie started coming out on DVD, Sybil Danning and Philippe Mora tried to, like, pitch an idea for another Howling movie, and the guy, was it Gary Bradner, the guy who wrote the books was like, and this was in, like, 2008, he was like, I think the Howling series is, needs a rest. Apparently though, 2 years later, a little film, a little book and film by the name of Twilight had come out, and suddenly it became very profitable to be making movies about vampires and werewolves again. And so someone...
What year did Twilight come out specifically?
Let me see.
Because one thing I noticed that I think contributed to how not good this film did was, while I was making the, like, materials for the podcast to, like, the, like, thumbnails for social media, the posters are insane.
Oh shit. So like, we were already, the original Twilight was in 2008. By the time this movie came out, we were just about to get Breaking Dawn.
You know what? The marketing of this movie, they keep throwing in one of the extra werewolves and then having, like, the lead actor as, like, Edward, this extra werewolf edited as Taylor Lautner, and then the lead lady as, like, Bella Swan. And I think that incredibly harmed the...
Oh, yeah. Well, also, because that...
like a Twilight rip.
Yeah, well, because if it... Honestly, I would more readily compare it to, like, Teen Wolf or something, because it's definitely... Like, it's marketed like a Twilight, but it's definitely not like a Twilight, other than that it is about teenagers.
Literally. And also it's got the blue color correcting.
It does have, it is very, it is as blue as the Matrix is green.
I love that, like, blue though. I kind of want it to come back.
Yeah, well, yeah. It's gonna.
The blue colored lady.
Yeah, yeah, we'll talk about later, but also, yeah, there was a lot of cinematography where I was like, I didn't realize this era had such distinctive cinematography.
This distinctive cinema, and when you watch, like, the 30s, there's, like, a subtle charm to, like, all the, like, all the, like, stuff they had to do because they didn't have the technology.
Yeah.
But, like, something about the 2000s is just, like, wacky.
Yeah, which again is weird because this is the era that I learned to video edit, so I don't know what that says.
I think we can determine what that. No, I'm just kidding.
But yeah, so we did who got story notes for this one?
I think you did.
Okay, I yeah, my notes are very like truncated. But
But
so
that's all.
so yeah, we start to get into the actual movie. We start there's this kind of montage of like this woman is pregnant and she's like nervously I don't think they establish in the moment, but she's being like followed and like eventually she gets cornered and attacked by a werewolf who deliberately like attacks her so that her baby will be born a werewolf and we like and he's got this like circle tattoo on the back of his head. And it's like an which I guess if we follow the timeline this scene is supposed to be taking place in like the early 90s. But again, it looks a lot like just the 2010s. Um, but yeah, and then there's like and then like she's scratched by a werewolf and then explode and then like the building explodes, but her kid's okay. And so we're introduced to our lead, and what's his name? His name is Will Kidman, which I'm like there's a wrestler named Billy Kidman, and like part of my brain was like, is that a WCW reference? But so Will is like he's grown up without his mom, and it's he's about to turn 18. He's about to graduate high school, and we established that he's been like, you know, like a nerd for lack of a better term. He's like, you know, kept his head down. The like person that he's like that's like going over his like, you know, making sure he met all his requirements. He's like, you've never been in my office before. He's like, well, that's a good thing, right? And it's like he's just been like very very like head down, I guess.
Mhm.
And like this is because this is where the movie I feel like diverges from Twilight, because Twilight is very much a for girls movie, or at least in theory. Whereas this was very
Well,
much like a teen boy fantasy movie, I feel like.
yeah, I think that's definitely one of the ways it diverges. Like that they really, I think that it's been like it's interesting because I don't think the Howling really dealt with it like this until now. But I've
Yeah.
always personally seen the werewolf story, and I guess in like things like American Werewolf in London and all of that stuff, like it seems to be like an equivalent for like male puberty.
Yeah.
But
Or
like the
yeah.
Howling hasn't really dealt with it in that way. But I think the
Yeah.
other separator is that like there is the like love triangle aspect and there is like the love part for sure. But that's definitely like I think the B plot to like the finer like details of this
Yeah.
kid growing up. And so Twilight isn't necessarily about like
Yeah.
it's about like
Mm.
this person stepping into their power, it's
You
personal
know what?
power, which is subtly different from like somebody stepping into a new phase of their life. And I think this is more phase of life than like
Yeah.
there's
Actually,
some elements that cross over, but it's a little different. But what were you saying? Sorry.
I was talking about werewolves as puberty. I just realized that I still need to watch Ginger Snaps, but everything I know about that movie, I feel like there's
Mm.
probably a lot of that in this movie because that was also like werewolfism as an allegory for girl puberty.
Yeah. And I think yeah, you get like it's just it's a little different. Like all the pieces are similar, but they're put together and we focus on different elements in
Yeah.
both movies.
So he yeah so yeah we kind of establish he's got he's got his one best friend Sachin. I can't remember how you pronounce his name, but he's his best friend is like a film buff, and so he's like later on that's how we get all the werewolf lore. But And they're like talking about graduating, and there's the quote, the popular girl of the school that he's always been like had his eyes on, as mentioned, played by Lindsay Shaw of Ned's Declassified fame. um,
Oh
and
yeah, in her like I'm an adult actress now role.
yeah, in her, the I'm off the leash, so I'm gonna like go nuts.
I too am graduating into adulthood.
But and his friends like, we're graduating, this is like your last chance to like shoot your shot or whatever. And like he ends up talking to her, and as like there's because she's with this one guy, and then there's also like a group of guys who are like the most we're obviously werewolves group of guys I've seen in one of these movies. um
They try to play it off like jocks a little, but like yeah, they're
yeah.
very much there they are.
But so he like talks to her a little, and she's kind of interested in him. And then this other kid with like, he's got like a Belgian accent, which I thought was an interesting like character choice, or like choice for this character.
The Howling, they always want a white guy with a European accent from somewhere.
Shit.
Or Australian. Australian
No.
isn't European, but
Yeah, well, I think his character's supposed to be European too, because she mentioned, she's like, "Oh yeah, I was only dating him because he's got a chateau in France or whatever."
yeah, the
Um,
Howling has a fascination with white men with accents.
it really does. I like that we kept that through line.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh my.
but he so yeah, obviously this jock guy is like, "Hey, what are you doing talking to my girl?" And he like, there's like an altercation, and Will gets scratched. And like you think, because we already know that he's like the baby from the start, but you think that that's gonna be like a werewolf thing,
True.
and I don't think it is. But the girl and these three guys, they like invite him to this like edgy graduation party, basically. And I can't remember what she has, some line where she's like, I can't remember what it is, but it's something to the effect of like, "Oh, maybe there's more to you," or "Show me if there's more to you than it seems like," or something. Um,
Yeah. And it's super interesting because they're immediately set up as exact opposites of each other because
yeah,
she's grown up without a dad. And so like they kind of like are able to understand each other closer than the people around them for sure. But I think it's super funny and it's also a super like it's you get these teen plots not as much in like that 80s era teen movie, but you get them a lot in the like 2010s era where like you
mm,
have like a popular girl with a guy who treats her wrong and then the like
yeah,
little like nerdy boy who just wants college, you know what I mean? I think that's super interesting how it's like seems like a very it's like a common story, but in the 2010s high school dynamics you tend to get that a little bit more.
yeah. I think because yeah, at least in this type of movie, because I feel like it did exist in that like what's his name,
John Hughes.
yeah, that like John Hughes type 80s movie. But yeah, it's definitely different here.
Mm-hmm. It's a little bit more like two men like and also it's super interesting because like I think in John Hughes movies there's a clear distinction on who's the better guy. But one of the
Mm,
interesting things about this movie is that the main character, he's not it's almost this, like I don't think it's the Scott Pilgrim effect, but it is what Scott Pilgrim became where it's like he's not actually like this good guy
yeah,
and he's not trying to be either. And I think the character has a lot of really incredibly self-aware moments because we get so much of his inner dialogue through the narration, which
yeah,
honestly I didn't actually mind the narration as much. Like
yeah. I
sometimes
didn't
it's
hate it.
narration I don't like, but I didn't hate it. Yeah,
Yeah,
it really drove home the like tortured silly teenager.
yeah. Which also I think is very like this era, because this is like the era of like the poetic emo kid kind of, and I think like if there's a major difference, I think it's the fact that we're introducing that archetype into this framework.
Yeah.
And So yeah, he's like, uh, that's it, because they invite him outside the school, and then these guys are like, fuck you, you're lame. And this lady is like an older lady who I get she I'm trying to figure out how much I should reveal early on, but like it's the same actress from the intro, so I mean, I don't know. But she's like she she just gives me the ick, which I think she was supposed to in this movie, but she gives me the ick. And she's like, "Oh, you're like you're about to graduate too, huh? Like life gets better or whatever." And like then there's another kid that she goes off with. She's like, "Oh, that he's mine." And so just the way she delivers her lines, I'm like, I am uncomfortable with this woman just in general.
Yeah, there's like this like thing on TikTok now where like everybody is talking about their like high school teachers who are hitting on the athlete boys and how
Yeah,
like they're like predators that aren't taken seriously. I
yeah,
think she fully fits that framework.
yeah. Which again, I think she was supposed to, but
Yeah, for sure.
but I,
And it's
I,
interesting
yeah,
because like yeah, it's like almost like yeah, she's like evil, but you don't know in what way. And I enjoyed that.
yeah, yeah. And then we go back and we learn a little more about the kid's like upbringing and how he's had like his dad struggled to make ends meet and misses his mom, and he gives him this ring that used to belong to his mom that was made of silver. And I'm like, gasp, a silver ring in a werewolf movie. I wonder if that's going to be important later. Uh,
Oh, that felt so like Vampire Diaries with the like locket that has the
yeah,
anti like vampire. That shit was so funny.
you just brought up the cursed words, the Vampire
The
Diaries.
Vampire Diaries on the CW.
I, I this is I'm trying not to get sidetracked anymore, but I had someone was talking to me about, he's like, I love vampire stuff and I can't get into Vampire Diaries, and I just realized why. And it's because all these other shows are like vampire shows with social dynamics, whereas like the Vampire Diaries, you could remove all the vampires and it would still just be a show about like teen drama.
Like yeah, Vampire Diaries really goes hard with the like the vampires are like it's like yeah, they're not even an allegory for anything. They're just like set dressing.
but but yeah, yeah. And speaking of edgy things, so he's been mulling it over because that's kind of like the conflict is he's like, I've been trying to be a good boy, but I regret not being a bad boy more when I had the chance. And that's like his
Yeah.
character conflict. And so he's
And
like,
also he has the like he has the like Princess Diaries kind of effect where like he's wearing glasses
oh
and then gets
god.
them removed to embrace
Yeah.
his sexualized persona.
Yeah, well I wrote that down later that it's exactly like cuz he loses the glasses cuz his werewolf stuff like
Mhm.
starts kicking in, and I was like, it's exactly like the first Spider-Man movie with Tobey Maguire.
And literally, which I rant about this all the time, but you can only tell so many stories. There are only so many stories out
Truly, honestly. Uh, but so he's like, I'm gonna go to this edgy drug party, and they're playing "Killing Moon" by Echo and the Bunnymen, which is a really good song, and that made me like perk up for a second. Um, but there's like the werewolf guys are like, oh, we didn't think you'd show up, and it's interesting because like the way these werewolf guys are set up, you think they're gonna be jerks, but they're kind of interested in him also, and which I thought was it was a neat dynamic where like he's not part of the in crowd, but also he's not being like hard excluded either. And I think
they
that
want to haze him to join their sorority.
yeah, kind of where like I feel I don't know, I feel like because it's a thing I've thought about with teen movies where I think the dynamics of like what a high school was like in the past and what a high school has become are very different.
Mm.
And so I like we have the one guy who's like, you know, a rich jockey asshole, but like I feel like everyone knows that, and like he's not like it's not like everyone in the school loves him. Everyone's like that guy's an asshole. And like even
Well, I think that's like kind of plays into that also plays into, I think, how they have the lead character not being this like good guy. There's almost a super even playing field with him and his like rivals.
yeah. Cuz yeah, it's very much like which again, maybe that's part of the like fantasy element of it where he's not like these guys, but he could be if he wanted to kind of thing.
Hmm. Yeah, 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 yeah.
But yeah, so the also the but yeah, the funniest part about this party is he gets there and some random girl like makes out with him and gives him like an ecstasy pill by like kissing him and I'm like that I don't think that's a thing I don't go to many drug parties. You know, I was a
The
pretty
drug
clean
party?
kid in school, but I don't think that's a thing that happens a lot.
I didn't get invited to a party until college. So I was such a nerd in high school. No, I'm just kidding. But uh, what I heard about, which who knows if this is true or not, but all the like popular kids apparently did cocaine at
Mm,
my era. So they
mm.
weren't doing ecstasy. They were snorting coke together.
Do you think they were actually snorting coke, or do you think someone got a bag of like flour and sold it to them?
Oh, you know what? I wouldn't be shocked if it was the latter. I know for sure people got with oregano and weed a bunch at my school. That was so funny every time.
If that's one thing I would have gone back and done, it's sold stuff like that to people for money, because I think that would have been
You're gonna say,
hilarious. I
I
would
thought that was going in a different direction. If there was one thing I'd do in high school, I'd go back to do a bunch of hard drugs.
no, I wouldn't go back and no, that's my galaxy brain moment. I wouldn't go back and do hard drugs, but I would heavily take advantage of the people who were, because I'm,
But
which
honestly,
is
as you
maybe
should.
worse, honestly. But anyway,
I
but
mean, you were taking it would have been silly rich kids from the suburbs.
yeah, sure, yeah.
You know what I mean?
uh I mean, I grew up in a meth town, so I would have had to figure that out. But anyway, um uh so the girl
Breaking Bad, but like it's fake meth.
you
How do
just
you make fake meth?
could you make, you know, the like crystallized sugar that they put on a stick, like
The ones that they do in those like really fancy cooking competition
yeah,
shows. You
exactly.
just crush that up.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm getting so
This
off
is
topic.
such yeah, this is anyway, so the girl Eliana is the character who she sees him and she's like, "Oh, you do have a dark side after all," or something like that. But she's like happy to see him. And this part, like where they're like dancing together and stuff, maybe because of the coding of the last few movies, like I kind of thought that she was maybe part of the werewolves and that her interest in him was her trying to like bring him in. But like
If I'm getting like a little ahead, if I'm getting a little ahead, I agree with that, and I think that is how we're supposed to read it, because
okay.
I think that, it's kind of like it's kind of like a subtle mystery thing that they do, because the creepy woman we mentioned earlier, she's the actual like werewolf that you have, that is like the dangerous one
Yeah.
essentially. You know what I mean? And I think like they give you enough of her being weird, but they don't want to like give too much of it. So they create all these red herrings for you. And I think one of the red herrings is you thinking that it's the love interest.
Okay,
And so
yeah.
I think they do lean into that a
All right.
little bit. Not to
Okay.
like get ahead because
No,
it's not
I
revealed
yeah.
until later that she's the werewolf, but to bring it up as a
Yeah.
point of discussion.
Yeah, mostly
Absolutely.
I'm just glad because I wasn't sure if that was a thing you were supposed to think or if I was just being an idiot. So that makes
Yeah,
me feel
it's kind
way
of a
better.
mystery device. Where like in Harry Potter, right? Professor Quirrell in the first one is the bad guy. And he's weird enough that you notice him, but they like overplay Snape
to be like the one you think it is so that the twist works.
Mm,
I felt like it was kind of like that. It was like a pseudo mystery. Like
yeah.
it's a specific, there's a specific name for it in mystery,
How,
but whatever.
how dare you mention Harry Potter on this in the company of a trans woman? Sorry,
Ebony Darkness Dementia Raven. Ebony Dark is it? Wait, is her last name is it Dementia?
what?
Ebony Darkness.
Ebony
What?
Darkness Dementia Ravenway.
It is Dementia. What? I
Yeah.
never processed that it was Dementia.
I think it's
I'm sorry,
dementia with like an apostrophe too.
I didn't mean to microaggress you, Evelyn.
I just had to take
And
that
I thought
joke while it
it was
was
a
there.
baby plot.
um yeah, where were we even at? So
We were
yeah.
talking about
Yeah, well, I guess I found cuz that was the one part that I thought was cuz like it turned she's like I think she says here she's like, "Yeah, I always noticed you watching me and I always liked you or something." And so she's always just been genuinely interested in him, I guess, which kind of like I guess it works, but also for me that was where it feels like that's where I got the teen fantasy vibe because I'm like, it turns out that the quiet sensitive boy was who the hot popular girl always wanted. And
yeah, I think it's an interesting take on it for sure.
yeah. But although I guess it also removes a lot of like it gets us to where we need to be faster because there's not a bunch of stuff of like building their relationship and whatever. But I mean, I guess, but
Yeah, because I think the way they kind of like fast track why they feel connected too, because like I said, they like set up this like foil where like she's lost her dad, she's grown up without her dad, he's grown up without her mom. They're both kind of misunderstood, and she just
mm,
happened to find herself. Like it's almost like they kind of like were the same person until they made the exact opposite decision. So like it
yeah,
makes sense that they're like together in that way because it's like kind of like how you said earlier, he can be like the like jockey like douchebag guys, but he chose to be a nerd. She chose to be like them.
yeah,
So I think it makes it easier to buy their like romance and them feeling like they're connected on that level without like
mm,
having to do a bunch of scene work. Because then
yeah,
I lose out on the werewolf stuff
yeah.
pretty much.
Well, also,
Then the
yeah.
movie is
Well, also, I
that's why I say it's
think,
like a B plot. But what was I
yeah.
saying?
Well, also, I think that's a thing this movie I kind of liked about this movie where because they're graduating high school, there's a lot of the high school tropes we don't have to deal with because it's literally like their last day.
Yeah. And it's kind of like the whole film is leading up to graduation.
Yeah. Um but so they're like together and they go off to like I don't know what would teenagers at a party be doing that they'd need to go off someplace private? I don't know. Um uh but they go off and they get like separated and he ends up being chased by a werewolf, which I think also for a minute I thought the werewolf might have been her like trying to
Yeah.
like do something, but like he gets chased by this werewolf and a security guard finds him and then she catches back up with him and he's like there was a werewolf and the guy's like okay yeah sure what how high are you on ecstasy and he's because he
How
actually
high are
is
you
very
on
high on
ecstasy?
ecstasy and then she catches up and he's like you know this guy and she's like no and leaves which
Threw it right under the bus, bitch.
yeah um
She said, "I don't. I'm gonna mind my business."
literally um so that moment sort of like he kind of writes it off, which I did like that because it made sense where he's like he's had a werewolf encounter but he's able to write it off because he's like I was literally on drugs, that might have just been what was going on. um and but also and this is the thing because I thought the like him getting scratched or whatever like would play into like activating his werewolf powers, but we did establish he's been because I think it's a thing where he just doesn't become a werewolf until he's 18 because he's been like bit since he was a baby. um
which honestly was an interesting. It made the story a little more interesting. Like they could
Yeah.
have easily just like gone with the like he gets scratched and that's what turns him. But I thought it was an interesting choice because it feels like it's referential to like the franchise itself. Like
Mm.
honestly, the other subtle thing that happens throughout the film is there's a lot of really subtle references to the previous Howlings without like trying to be exactly. And it kind of feels like this is created based off of a lot of them. And then like the like son werewolf plot, like that was all five. So it felt like
Yeah.
a good choice,
Well, and
you know?
also, yeah, I just learned this. I guess it's definitely not, there's not that much in common, but the third novel deals with a kid who's like inherited, like a guy who's inherited werewolf stuff from something that had like from his
Mm.
parentage, so they kind of like go back to that too.
It's extremely Ibsen sins of the father are vested in the children
The sins of the father or the mother. um
or the mother.
but so he but like this stuff starts kicking in now because he's like his scars have healed up a little bit and all of a sudden he doesn't need his glasses, and like I
And
said,
he's a
it's
hottie.
yeah. Yeah, I think, yeah, that was in Spider-Man too, because doesn't he also, he like looks and he's like, oh, I'm a little more like fit than I was before. um I could be misremembering, but I think they literally have that moment too. um and he's like back at school, and uh he's like talking to his friend because he had that experience. He's like, you know anything about werewolves? And his friend's like, that's a weird question to ask, but also yes. um and like he kind of gives us the like, this is how the movie sets ground rules for werewolves, because he's like, yeah, you know, they can only be killed by a silver bullet except for the alpha, and alpha can only be killed by another werewolf, and nobody knows how they're made.
which
uh
which I thought it was interesting how like I feel like okay, there's this incredible short that it like it's called Lost. It's something. It's some short about incels, but kind of like a little predating incel culture as we know it now.
mm,
You know what I mean? I think it's like just as that kind of stuff is starting. But I thought it was incredibly interesting how it all of a sudden goes into this like kind of incel explanation of werewolves.
yeah,
I
well,
thought
it's,
that was an interesting sign of the times for sure.
yeah. uh what else is I oh, another sign of the times was they have to have that dig where he's like, what, this isn't like movies where you sparkle in the sunlight or some shit. And like, I'm like, had to get that dig in there.
And it's like real rich of the script writers to add that in when the marketing department made the worst advertising of all time trying to rip Twilight.
That
Like real rich. You know what I
you
mean?
could write a book on the ongoing tragedy of marketing people completely derailing what the movie itself intended to say. um
Also, yeah, that is.
that's, again, speaking of Joe Dante from the Howling One, that's always me with Small Soldiers, because that's like a movie about how like the military industrial complex is marketed to children through
Yeah.
action figures, and then they made a huge action figure line to promote the movie, and I just thought that was really funny. um anyway, back
No,
to this
that's so
movie.
real though. Yeah, I have to tell you something after this. I'll tell you about
Oh boy.
it. I just can't share
uh
it.
um so yeah, he loses, oh, because that's the thing, he's still wearing his glasses, and the foreign kid like fights him in the bathroom, and he's like, hey, I told you to stay away from my girl or whatever. And this is when he's, you know, he's a werewolf now, he's a man, and he's like, you're an asshole, I'm gonna fight back. And he like, because he's got this werewolf strength, he like pushes him. It kind of like beats the shit out of him a little after getting beat up a little, because that's, the kid starts the fight by taking his glasses and crushing them. So that's the movie being like, okay, these are out of the script. um
we something he has to change now.
Yeah. The what is that in the in Save the Cat, there's like a beat where it's like the point of no return or something.
And yet that's what this feels like for sure.
Uh but he Okay, yeah, cuz that's what happens. So yeah, he fights the kid and leaves, and the kid gets up to go after him and is attacked and killed by a werewolf that pushes him down the stairwell. Like American Psycho style, like he drops him down the spiral, like,
Mm-hmm.
and it's played off like it's one of those guys, basically, because they're like, he's a werewolf now, so we're gonna protect him, kind of thing. Is kind of how it's framed. And he goes back, and I can't remember when this happened, because I wasn't. This is I got into this movie, so there were some spots I forgot to take notes. But he eventually he gets to he sees what's her name again, Eliana, and he like kisses her and stuff publicly, because now he's a werewolf man, and he's through being a quiet dorky boy, and he's gonna take what he wants. It was really funny to me.
Which I thought was funny too, because like he kind of like, in a way, I don't know if I felt like it worked in the movie, but in its own way, it felt more true to life. The way he vacillates back and forth between like, I am super like embracing this new like strong persona I have, versus like, no, I can't. It was it was really interesting. He kind of flops back and forth throughout the movie. I think a little bit more than a film calls for, but it felt very realistic.
Yeah. And then the last bit to establish that he's a werewolf is he is like, he goes to the like lunch hall or whatever it's called, and one of the werewolf guys is working there, and he's like, I don't eat meat, but I'm like really fucking hungry. And
that's another cute,
which is like,
Howling.
A little cute, the vegetarian becoming a carnist, like very very Howling. And the guy's like, these hot dogs are pretty good, and he's like, sure, whatever. And the guy puts the severed finger of the French kid that was just killed into this instead of a hot dog, and like feeds it to Will, and he doesn't realize right away, and then he's like once he realizes, the guy's like, yeah, I can't remember, he was like, he tastes good, or he's like, he got what he,
it's like class wing or something.
Yeah,
it's like not actually like a body part or anything, which like I felt
well,
like
it was a finger with his ring.
It was a finger with his ring. Oh, he's like, how does he taste?
Yeah. And then
he like goes and he vomits.
Yeah, because it's like them kind of giving him, like, they're trying to slowly approach him and be like, yo, you're in the gang now. You're one of the South Side Serpents.
You're one of the you're one of the South, exactly.
So he he goes and vomits. He ends up in, so this we get a few cutaways where like the woman from before is like approaching and hitting on his dad, and like, so there's
yes.
While this is happening, she's kind of like seducing him, and again, like, it feels really weird.
Does his dad get called to the office or something?
I can't remember what the deal
where
is.
Are they?
Because I thought his
Vegas set.
Well, I thought they were like at a room at the school, like his dad was there for his son's graduation. And then
I couldn't tell where they were exactly, but they end up there together.
Yeah. And so she like kind of like seduces him and like gets him, they like kind of go off together, because he's like, yeah, I got some time, I can smash.
Yeah, and they're like kind of like directly foils for his son and the Eliana, because it's almost like they're set up as as they knew each other and they didn't work out and they wanted to be together, but they never actually crossed that line. Whereas like they're kind of crossing the line in their younger years now, or I guess Eliana and his, oh my god, I keep forgetting the lead's name. Jesus.
Will
is able to do what his dad wasn't able to do with this evil werewolf lady who we don't find out is evil. But this was the really 2000s part, because when they go to Smash, you get that 2000s like humping, which is just like egregious. And then you get the POV shot from the guy on the bed. Like, that's a very 2010 sex scene,
yeah. No, never mind. I had an interesting conversation on Twitch one time where the streamer was talking about VR porn, but we're not going to get into that right now.
Oh my god, that's so funny, because I think I know what streamer, but I wasn't sure. We're not going to share the streamer.
I mean, he was very unapologetic, so I don't think he'd be ashamed, but yeah.
We love you, hijacking.
Hey. So they're in the library, so Will is off in the library while this is happening, and he's like trying to find a book on werewolves, because he's like, a lot of weird shit's going on. This guy just fed me human fingers. I think I might be a werewolf. And
through a lot right now.
Yeah. It's a big day for him. And Eliana shows up and she's like, wanna fuck, basically. Cause she like there's some
Is this when they're where are they at again?
In the library.
In the library.
Yeah, and she's got that because she's got that post like Avril Lavigne kind of like skirt and tie look, because partway into the movie Aaron texted me, it was like, this tie is giving I baked you a cookie but I eated it.
It literally is. They're like so evil, and I loved seeing the 2010s take on Hitchcockian color coding, where like she's a good girl, so she has a white shirt on, but like she's a black tie because she has some bad girl tendencies. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but she's like, oh well, if you're a werewolf, I'd have to tie you up, and she like uses her tie to like tie him to the bookshelf, and they kind of hump on each other a little bit. And
like also, okay, this is where I started getting like hard on the movie.
Yeah,
it's like
this is weird. This is uncomfortable.
It was incredibly weird. It was like, and then like all of a sudden it's like BDSM, but like kind of, it's an incredibly surreal scene where like it almost feels like it's happening to him. He doesn't feel like he's actually engaging with it, and so it's incredibly surreal to like. It's just like incredibly awkward, and I don't think it's awkward in the way it is intended to be. Like, it's not done to be an awkward moment. It's like just feels awkward. I think it's a serious moment. Yeah. And also the way it intercut with like him and his dad also getting laid, I think was a really odd choice.
Yeah, well, because I think it's supposed to. It's supposed to like bring those parallelisms to light, I think, but.
And I guess in a way, I think you're meant to like you're meant to think that the scene with him and I almost said Mose, him and Eliana. You're supposed to think with him and Eliana that the scene goes like it actually goes for his dad.
Yeah.
So this is like the big werewolf reveal where like you're kind of this is the twist.
Because I was gonna say it definitely wasn't intentional. But trying really hard to be serious and sexy and actually just being super awkward is very appropriate to, like, the teenage high school vibe.
The most I did in high school, I think, was, like, kiss a boy.
Yeah.
So maybe I didn't actually do BDSM with anybody, so...
yeah, well, I
was a little...
Yeah, well, that also feels like one of those things where, like, people who aren't experienced just think all sex is BDSM.
Literally.
But
she like ties him up.
But yeah.
You have a donor. It's like,
oh yeah, I forgot about that.
That's what, yeah,
Um,
I get hard on it in a second, but yeah, anyway.
but
Sorry.
yeah, so yeah, while this is happening to him, we go back to yeah, his dad and the lady are hooking up, which I was gonna call out his dad for like not recognizing this woman, but I didn't realize it was the same woman either. Um, so maybe I'm an idiot too. Who knows? But the lady's like, I stopped something like I stopped dyeing my hair red, and you don't even recognize me. I've been young all this year, and it's like the reveal that she's Will's mom, and she like re-seduced his dad who didn't recognize her because it's been like 18 years since she supposedly died, and she like
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and she
Which also they like kind of like have a jump cut to like in the POV shot
oh
where
yeah
she's on
yeah
top of him. You have like a little jump cut, and like the way they style her and like the hair and everything, I kind of get him not like, you know what I mean? I kind of get it
yeah
a little, but I will say, I mean, it's kind of like the same, it's kind of like the Superman thing where it's like you just put glasses on
yeah.
and
I mean,
a little bit of a different haircut, but like
yeah. Which again,
glasses in this movie signify big change.
I mean, yeah. I guess to his credit, if like I was married to someone and I thought they died, and I saw someone who had the same kind of facial structure but drastically different hair, at most I'd be like, "Wow, they look a lot like this person I used to be married to." I wouldn't be like,
Yeah.
"This is clearly my dead like spouse back to life."
Are
But
you my dead spouse back to life?
but yeah, so she's like, I was a werewolf and you suck, and now I'm gonna take our son back, and then she like kills him, I guess. And
Yeah.
so
That's what you get for being horny.
yep, never have
Mutuals.
sex ever. That's the
Or
message
you-
of this movie. Um, but yeah, and so Will and Eliana are talking like after whatever the hell happened there, and they say something about like she's like, yeah, I'm after graduation I'm gonna be going off to Europe with my family or something. I don't know.
She's going with her mom for like 2 weeks or something. I thought it was a really random. I was like, okay.
Yeah, but
She's like, I'm going on vacation with my mom, so I don't know. We
Yeah.
gotta decide if this is gonna work. I was like, you're not moving
yeah.
permanently. Like, we're okay.
Yeah. Well, I guess because it's assumed that they'd both be going to college in different places after that or something. I don't know, but
Maybe. It's a very like high schooler problem. You know what I mean?
yeah. But that the important part is there's some line where she's like, I don't know, will we be able to like live without each other or something? And that comes back, but like she leaves, and that's when Will is finally approached by his mom and the werewolf gang, and his mom's
Which
like,
I will say, after this point in the movie, it goes from 0 to 100.
oh, hardcore. Yeah, she like does this funky like werewolf jump from the top, like up on this balcony down to where he is.
That's one of the like. I think it's like Evelyn and I were talking about that. Like, I don't know what it is about the special effects in the like 2010s era, but it feels like the special effects were like reliant on kooky editing choices.
Yeah, well, because it was the era when we were really starting to get into CG, but CG wasn't good enough to carry the whole thing. So yeah,
And I guess maybe CG wasn't super accessible.
that too.
So yeah, you get a lot of like super crazy like transitions and like speed up slowdowns, especially in this last section of the movie
Yeah,
to like signify this like supernatural vibe.
yeah, and
This larger than life like werewolf ability.
yeah, it's very True Blood. uh, but yeah, so she get his mom.
It is super True Blood.
Like yeah, the vampire running. But his mom, she gives him, this super villain speech of like, your father made you weak and I can make you strong, and like join the dark side. Together we'll rule the galaxy as mother and son. Da da da.
Which a super interesting take on a female villain.
Yeah, I was just thinking that,
like they didn't have to make her like a woman, and I thought that was super interesting. I think she's she's like a very interesting female, because it's not played like the girls can be alphas too. She just kind of is the alpha, so that's something I do appreciate.
Also, one thing I wasn't sure on, but that it seems like they kind of hinted, was that it's going back to like the Howling, where like the more she was a werewolf, the more evil she became. Because like at the start of the movie, it seems like she doesn't want him to become a werewolf, or at least like maybe she's not. I don't think she's a werewolf yet at that point. But also like she spent all this time with his dad and stuff, so it seems like like the person she became isn't the person she started as, and they don't really explore that. But I thought that was also interesting.
Yeah, I think they like plant it. It would have been interesting to like see, but I do think for the like film that it is, that plant is definitely enough for us to like make that connection.
Yeah.
It was like the balance it needed, but I agree. Yeah, they didn't really explain it.
But so she's like, gonna like take him off to be werewolves together, and then Eliana comes back in because she's. And this is where that line comes back, because she's like, I thought about it. Maybe I do need you around or something. And then she walks in on this.
Yeah, that was the most like comedy of errors, kind of like entrance to the climax.
Yeah, because like.
And also, it's kind of like a lot, because they're all like, at this point, she's very like, she's kind of robed up like Stirba.
A little bit.
Yeah, she felt like kind of like Stirba 2.0.
Yeah, the Stirba for the new decade.
Yeah.
Stirba for the 2010s.
Not the Stirba we needed, but the one we deserve to want to have.
Which I think that's like contemporary to this.
Nolan got it from this.
And so then they're like, oh, well, this girl's here. You should kill her to show us how much of a werewolf you like. To prove to us that you want to be a werewolf by killing this girl.
Which is kind of interesting, because I didn't get that he wanted to be a werewolf.
Yeah, well, I think it's
just kind of like.
Because I think it's more like, you want to be accepted by me, your mother, more so than being a werewolf, and that's just like, the
old incestuous mother plot.
Yeah, because that's also when the ick really comes in strong, is she kind of like, she just gets really physical with it, and I don't like it. Weird. I don't like it.
It's also
bad
weird.
Touch.
It's weird with the scene that's coming up, and it's weird in like the truncated like end.
Okay, yeah.
It's not like a ton of time has passed in the movie overall, but I will say I did feel like, why are we going so fast? It's the last, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. But so he does this thing where he's like backing Eliana up against the wall, because they're that's it, they're gonna kill her in front of him, and he's like,
yes,
that's it,
right.
And he's like, no, let me do it, and he's like, I've decided maybe I can live with it, because that's at first he says, well, I can live without you, to try and get her to leave, but she hasn't, like, she can't leave, and so he's like, well, I'll kill her, and he like backs her up against the wall, and then at the last minute he like grabs her and like they dives through this window together, which is the most like messy edit I think I've seen in a good long while. Because it's like they dive at the window through one angle, they come out at like a different angle, and there's like some CG glass to like, so the glass broke, and like it was a lot.
The way the cut happens, it was like, it almost made the fall look worse than it was.
Totally.
It goes, like, they essentially exit a frame, and then the frame they enter is the ground.
Yeah.
It was surreal.
And then okay, yeah, now I'm trying to remember how this goes.
I believe she's like kind of knocked out, kind of not, and then they escape into the school.
Yeah. And
They like have like a little like half like they have like a little rescue like, oh my god, we are in this together moment. And then
yeah.
they kind of like continue the climax.
Yeah, and then it gets really die hard cuz yeah, they escape back into the
Yeah.
school and then the wolves trigger they trigger this like cuz everyone else is kind of left cuz it's graduation day and so they're at the graduation ceremony. Um but they trigger this like lockdown of the school building so it becomes like Die Hard with werewolves in a high school. And which also really cute editing of the like footage of the building and then the CG like lockdown windows closing. But they're like trapped in this building and they're trying to like like escape somehow, and his friend is also in the building because he had this plan where he was gonna like hack the graduation feed and broadcast his like short film to the whole city. So he's in there ready to do that, and they're like they contact
Which
him
his fit was so 2010s.
Oh,
his fit especially. Yeah. He's got like the long T-shirt with the vague graphics on it and like text, and it's like it's like a specific style.
Yeah, very much.
It's kind of like the T-shirt equivalent of the like rustic Italian kitchen.
Why does that make sense but also not sense at the same time?
I think it's like the perfect way to explain that type of aesthetic of shirt.
Yeah, but because I think that's because they realize like he's in there with the werewolves, and so they're like, we have to find him, and like he ends up getting killed by the werewolves like before they can get to him.
Which is it's super interesting, and I think that there's somewhere like there's some paper about how you integrate digital video into film, because he's like on the live feed and they're watching him like get attacked by the werewolf as he's like filming. It was very interesting and like kind of meta. It was very interestingly done. There's like some film school analysis about the digital age in there, but
yeah. Well, also because when he's like he realizes he's about to die. He's like, if I get killed, just make sure to put this up on YouTube so my life means something.
It was like, I guess the 2010s were really that like first era of like internet culture.
Yeah, it wasn't.
Gaining like social capital through internet culture.
Yeah, but because it was still like a really new thing. It wasn't like the norm yet.
And also, like, his friend is very like, he's not like how we said like that. Will he can exist in both these spaces as like the super douchey athlete who's like a super popular alpha guy, and he can also be like a nerdy like, ooh woo, I don't know what's going on, I'm like super asexual and I'm a nerd. Like he can be in both places, but his friend for sure cannot be like.
Yeah, which I think is also because it's like
he almost has to do the YouTube thing to get any clout. But what were you gonna say?
Yeah, well, because I think a lot of like Will's conflict is he can be whoever he wants, but he hasn't decided, and I think that's part of like his friend just decided to be a nerdy guy because he didn't want to be part of everything else. And like, at least that's kind of how I read it.
Yeah, I read it as that, but because he can't be like everybody else, he doesn't quite have the same like stature to him.
That makes sense.
He doesn't have what it takes. He doesn't have that it factor.
I mean, also we could talk about the elephant in the room of the like nerdy brown friend of the white male lead, but like.
I think that is for sure another bit that I was kind of touching on, but like not fully touching on. But that is another, I think, relevant aspect. for sure.
Yeah. But so they end up on like they're kind of like running from werewolf to werewolf at this point. And I'm forgetting like when stuff happens. But she cuz they go into this like science lab. And this is where it's like, you know, he's being a nerdy guy comes back to the front cuz he's like, "Oh, if I do these," like he basically hand builds flamethrowers for him because earlier his friend was like, fire can hurt werewolves.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're like armed, and then they take these flamethrowers and they go to the gym where his friend had the camera set up.
Which it's very interesting because going back to that save the cat, it's like a very interesting like plan B, plan A. It's like something that can defeat the werewolves, but he's still not kind of like embracing. He's still between these two worlds. He doesn't want to accept that he's a werewolf, but he wants to stay this like so he goes for like the most human solution to the problem.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because also his friend said, he's like, if you kill someone as a werewolf, you become a full werewolf, and there's no coming back from that. So he's deliberately like avoiding embracing this side because he feels like if he does, there's no like coming back. And so yeah, they like stand off with these guys into a in the gym. And they get, because this is where I didn't take notes. Because that's what happened. They like chase him out of the gym.
You know why you're confused, Evelyn?
Why?
Because they cut to the stupidest scene in the middle of this action-packed climax. They go downstairs with the flamethrowers, and they find this like underneath the school. They find like a basement full of all these like dead bodies of a bunch of people that the werewolves have been collecting.
Which I will. This is where I was like, okay, this is definitely not a Twilight knockoff because those movies could never.
There's like 20 dead bodies just hanging from the ceiling.
Yeah.
It's like they've like been collecting them like killer clowns from outer space.
Oh, it is literally killer clowns from outer space. You are so right.
Yeah, they have them all hanging in a different location.
Yeah, and they've got Will's dad is there too. Because that's what she kind of like taunts him with. Because I think she like snaps his neck because he's like barely dead or almost dead, and then she like kills him in front of him.
Mm-hmm.
And again, she's like, we've literally got you cornered. There's nothing you could do. And
then he kind of does the same fake out again, but this time he kind of lights everybody on fire, and then they escape again. It's like the road.
Yeah. I mean, that's a thing. Like, as someone who writes stuff, it's always interesting. Like, how far do you want to push? Because like how intelligent versus stupid do you want to make your villains? Because I think at some point, a lot of villains, what ends up happening is their ego gets the best of them. And so the reason that they don't consider these possibilities is because as villains, they're too like up in themselves to consider it. But if you do that too much, your villain just looks like an idiot. And so like there's a line to toe, and I feel like we're towing that line in this movie.
I think we're towing that line, and there's an issue, and I think it would have worked. But what happens is it's extremely tense. It's like, oh my God, they just got away from the werewolves again. The werewolves have been killing all of these people. And then they duck into like a porn set of a classroom.
Yeah.
And like have a whole, and this was the part where I was extremely hard on it. Because they just immediately like cut how the stakes feel to have this weird like sexual, like, what is it called? Sexual, stepping into your sexual,
Oh,
you know what I mean? What is
okay,
that?
yeah.
Like,
Cause
he's kind of
yeah,
like going from a virgin to a man. You know what I
yeah,
mean? They put this like weird, like, we have to have sex right now. And so like they're like fighting and they can't quite connect. And she's like, you're holding yourself back and you need to have sex with me right now.
yeah.
And then
Cause
they
it,
start, and then it's like she keeps like, and then she like she like hits him. It's so wild.
yeah.
It's an incredibly surreal
Well,
scene
cause
that was not earned at this
yeah,
point.
well, cause I think it's like she's trying to like get him to. She's like, on paper, I get what they were going for. Where like she's trying to like get him to embrace his werewolf side, because unless he's like able to break him to like make both of those halves work together, they won't survive. But yeah, I
So,
don't
like
know if
doing it
it's
through the
done.
vessel of you have to fuck me is like a lot
Yeah,
for like
yeah,
this like two high schoolers. Yeah, they're over 18, but like I don't know about that. But like the other thing that's incredibly like it feels like this interaction should have happened. Like it feels like if I'm restructuring how I think it should have been, I think this interaction should have happened at the tail end of the library scene, and she should have showed up during this interaction happening in the library scene. Because then you get they're all in the same situation together. They'd have to work together, but there's tension. And I just think it would have played better. And then they could have immediately kind of gone into like the werewolf fight following this like moment. But like they kind of just the movie kind of just stops dead for a second.
yeah.
Because
Well,
then they
you
start
know,
making out a lot, but then he's not able to like have sex with her, and then he storms
yeah.
out, and then the second he leaves on
Also,
the intercom, his mom comes on
oh
the intercom and is
yeah,
like, "I'm looking for you," and it's like, did everybody just take a collective pause so that they could discuss having sex? Like, were they about
yeah.
so
No, what
intense?
one of the werewolves like all like cracked the door and was like, "Oh shit, well, let's just give them a minute, everyone. Let's just."
That's what it
I
feels like.
I don't want to kill two people while they're having sex. That's just really awkward. So I'm gonna let them finish before we.
Yeah, what are they doing in there? They're having sex. They're having
We
sex
did.
right
Yeah,
now.
yeah. We did get. I think because what led them into that room was they. Because I think it's like a school office. Because they get chased in there, and one of the werewolves follows them, and they kill him with Will's silver second place debate trophy. And she's like,
Which
I guess it's a good thing you didn't win first.
as a 2010 speech and debater who got third, I felt so like represented by that. Representation matters, you know.
That's. I think I literally texted you when that trophy came up. I was like, imagine being in speech and debate.
No, literally, I died. It was so funny. It was so good. Yeah.
But
So
I had to bring that moment up because I almost forgot. But yeah, and what were you saying about like a flat Earth like speech?
So, okay, so I literally
I missed
had to
this.
rewind the movie. She is on the intercom, and he's walking through the high school, and she's like, "Son, you need to just accept who you are. You need to accept who you are, and you need to accept this new world that like is under the surface." Essentially, she's like matrixing him. She's like, you need to take the red pill. This is how the world really is. But then she just has some throwaway line where she's like, and 5,000 years ago, everybody had already accepted that there was a flat Earth. And then other werewolves. I mean, I was like, I'm sorry, what was that about the flat Earth?
Okay, so was she saying like, did she mean that that's like what people assumed was like the norm?
When she says it, it implies that the Earth is flat, and people chose to stop believing it.
Werewolves are the ones who made the Earth flat.
I could be wrong on that reading, but to be fair to me, it was a little bit odd to bring up the flat Earth conspiracy.
Because I'm assuming that was like because I missed this line, so I can't comment on it, but I'm assuming that was like the idea was like, you know, the world is full of things you don't understand, just like people in the Middle Ages didn't understand the shape of the Earth kind of thing.
You know what? I hope it was that reading. I hope it was
I need to go
that,
back and
because,
watch it now.
like, I really hope it was that, because I was incredibly. Yeah, this is the part of the movie where I was like, I felt like I was like having an out. Have you ever seen that like clip of that actress, and like she's on stage for like them winning like Best Picture or something, and she's just like looks really stressed out, and she's furiously like looking between like everybody on set as they're like talking.
Yeah.
That's how I felt. I was like, so much is happening, so much is being said. But then when they do get to their werewolf confrontation, I will say, I didn't like the werewolf. They had like a centaur look to me, the way they gave them all like fuzzy boot legs.
Yeah. Well, it was.
They have like huge calves. With,
it
like,
was another one.
furs, which is like they're wearing a fur boot.
It was another one where we had like a few different types of werewolf too. Because because the first kind, was like the kind with the weird fur boots, and then the other ones they still had that, but their top half looked a little more wolf-like, so I was willing to buy it more.
Yeah.
But yeah, because
Then we get our mother. Oh yes, but what were you saying? Sorry.
Because I think around this point, like Will finally like he like turns into a werewolf and like tries to fight his mom, and this was another 2010 cinematography thing, because like I think the genesis of it was like one of the Jason Bourne movies, but like every movie for like 10 years, like the action cinematography was like very jump cutty and shaky cam, and like this movie did that very heavily, and I was like, man, I do not miss this era of fight cinematography.
Yeah, it was kind of a lot. I almost didn't mind it, because I think in a way it kind of helps you suspend disbelief a little bit watching the two werewolves. So like I kind of appreciate the stylized look, but like it's just a little there's something a little off.
Yeah, because also I forgot, we're very out of sequence on this episode, but because earlier he tried to kill his mom with like that silver ring, and it didn't work, and he's you're the alpha, and so like that's why he becomes a werewolf, because he's like, there's no other way, I have to do this.
There's no other way.
And
I must become the alpha.
Yeah, and he like they get separated, but like Ileana finds him, and she's like, they have some like I know you're still in there kind of thing. But she gets killed by someone else, or so it would seem, and because they reveal to him, they're like that the French kid wasn't actually killed by one of them. It was Will turned into a werewolf and killed him, and it like blocked it out. And so that's like Eliana gives this speech to him where she's like, you already did that thing, but you were still you, so that means like you always have this choice kind of thing. So, and I think that's kind of when his arc, I think that's like him getting to the completion of his arc, where he realizes he's able to like he's able to balance the nerdy side and the bad boy side. Like he can be both of those things as a full human, and doesn't have to like completely abandon one, I guess.
Which is super interesting in the context of like this being like a moving on to a different phase of life. Because in this movie, it's almost like being a werewolf is going to cost.
Yeah.
You don't have to lose your high school self. You just feel, I guess, lose aspects of your old self in an earlier phase of life, but to move on to your, you know what I mean? It's very interesting.
Yeah. And you end up in probably the least hygienic state of your entire life. College is also a lot like werewolfery in that sense.
Exactly.
But so he's fighting his mom, and he can't, like, she kind of gains the upper hand on him. And then another werewolf shows up behind, and like Mortal Kombat fatalities are And we get this flashback,
Yeah,
and it's like,
gets are good.
and we get this flashback to, oh, he when they were having sex, he actually scratched up her back a bunch, and Ileana's a werewolf now too. Uh, and so it's like she's,
Which, like, in a way, because they set up that he got scratched and he was already a werewolf, I really like how they still planted it. It almost is like, it was a really good storytelling decision.
okay, yeah. And, yeah, and also I said I thought it was kind of cute how, because like the whole Howling series has been like the very first movie started with the question of like, you know, being in control versus embracing your primal nature and whatever. And like it's a question that's run throughout the series, so it's kind of cute that like the final, or like at least most recent movie in the series like is able to reconcile that by balancing things out. Like maybe that's me like blowing things up a little, but I thought it was cute that that's where we end up with. But
No, I think that's a great point, and I think that's a really, yeah, I think that's one of the strong points of this movie as like a Howling movie.
yeah.
Because I think the last like remaster we watched was like that Friday the 13th Texas Chainsaw take, you know, Texas Chainsaw take on Friday the 13th. So I did appreciate how this film kind of like, I think it rode that line of like doing, it rode that line of being respectful to the franchise and being able to like introduce these other elements, but also feeling like its own thing. It didn't feel like it was ripping off anything else. Like the Twilight thing is true, but like that feels like it's like in the marketing materials. It doesn't feel like it's a part of the movie, like we can say.
Yeah, and also I think the fact that the Howling series is so like kind of nebulous also makes it really easy to like bring into a new like decade, because you don't have all this baggage of like what makes a Howling movie.
1,000%.
So yeah, they're werewolves together now, and they are able to, they like blow up the high school, because that's the only way to stop. That's where I was like, the movie has risen, the stakes have risen from like, is this one kid gonna be good or bad, to there's an army of werewolves that could kill the entire population of the earth. Like, we went from like 0 to 1 billion.
0 to 1 billion, and like it's kind of interesting, because I wish they had touched on that whole like, I wish they had touched on, I guess, it almost, the conflict of the film feels very small world, because it's about all of these like people who are related who kind of like lost each other, and it's like the mom and the dad and all that stuff. But then you have like this extreme like big world plot that is kind of alluded to the whole time but never actually completely touched upon.
Yeah.
And so I almost wish they had gone into some of those like bigger world parts, because I think it would have made the ending feel a lot more like, oh my god, you know?
Yeah.
And it's kind of funny how it keeps cutting between high school graduation and like these intensive werewolf fights.
Yeah. Yeah, because the whole time the graduation ceremony's going, and like it's interrupted by the explosion, and the two of them like, you know, superhero land. And I can't remember what the guy, like the ending line of the movie is like, the guy says something about,
He's like, as you go off, it's like the tail end of his speech or whatever. He's like, as you go off into the world, you know, you're going to deal with big things, but you're going to be okay. And then they both come in after their little fight, and they're like, you don't even know the happened.
Yeah.
And then there's like the sick guitar riff into the credits.
Yeah. And then we get a fulfillment which ties it back to the first movie, because earlier they were going to use his friend's setup to show footage of Will turning into a werewolf to try and like stop stop his mother's plot that way, but that still ended up going out. So we get like kind of the modern like 2010s. Yeah. It's like the 2010s version of that, where like the werewolf footage is going out across the world or whatever.
And the thing that was really cute about it, which it carries into the credits, was it's that like meta cinematic, like oh my god, I'm watching this werewolf video, and is this even real?
Yeah, they're like looking at their phones. Yeah.
Is this even real, or is this fake?
Yeah. Well,
This is
and
such a
they
fake video.
and they tease a sequel because the guy with the red circle on the back of his
I
head
wish.
from the very start of the movie is watching, and he's like, "Oh, interesting, haha. I'll show up in the next movie." And yeah,
Big title card at the end. Will return. The werewolves will return.
yeah. So that's where we're left with. I'm like, when Howling reborn when?
Howling Reborn 2 when? Yeah, honestly, I think it would have done better if they marketed it differently.
Oh
But
yeah,
I don't think anybody watched it because they thought it was going to be just Twilight all over again.
yeah, literally. And yeah, I feel like it's gonna. Yeah, it's one of those things. I feel like it's going to become a cult movie in like 5 to 10 years. Because
There's
it's
no way, because it's like that style is literally the next thing to come back.
yeah, and it was a fun movie because yeah, I guess that's where I left off. Where I was like, I was glad this is the last one because I had yeah, awkward sexual things aside, I had fun with this movie.
Yeah, and for me, the awkward sexual things, like, I still feel like I didn't need them, but I guess it doesn't feel as bad because, like I said, they're all 18 and they're literally leaving high school in that moment. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So I think
it's
in a way, like it exploring some of those sexual themes a little more, like it fits the film more, even though I don't think they had to go as far with it.
yeah. Cause yeah, I was gonna so we're now that we're at the end of the series, I was gonna give my ranking.
Okay, yes, your ranking, Evelyn. What's your ranking? Your Howling ranking.
Yeah.
Wait, first, how many howls at the moon would you give that?
uh as many as Discord can handle, which I don't think is very many.
Is literally none. Discord is silencing the wolves.
Yeah. Discord is the enemy of werewolves.
Exactly. Okay,
So
where's your ranking?
So my ranking, my top was 2 because it was just we had so much fun with 2.
2 was so fun.
Christopher Lee, all that. The Howling 1 is probably technically the best movie, so it's my number 2 because it's probably one of the better ones, but I didn't give it. I just enjoyed some of the others more. My number 3 was this movie, Howling Reborn, because again, it had there were good character arcs. I had fun with it.
Yeah, it was pretty fun.
Howling 5 is my number 4. Because it was, we talked about how like the stage and everything and like the Agatha Christie elements, it was just really well made. Howling 6 had some issues, but it did some really interesting stuff, so that's my number 5. Howling 4 is my number 6 because I just have no strong feelings on Howling 4. It wasn't bad, but
it's almost like the most mediocre one because you feel nothing. Like it's like not badly done, but like you just don't really. You're like there it is.
It's one of the movies of all time.
Exactly.
After that, second
movies of all time. That's so funny.
7, Howling 3. Again, it has its fans. I couldn't get my head around it. I don't know what to make of it. Maybe I'll go back to it in a few years and change my opinion, but yeah, not. And then after, I might switch this around because my bottom was Howling 7, because I liked Howling 7. We talked about this. There were parts of Howling 7 I liked, but I've never seen a movie that didn't want to be a movie like that before, and so I feel like I can't give it that higher ranking. So that's my
Describing
lowest.
It as a movie that didn't want to be a movie is a great way to put it.
Yeah. But overall as a series, I enjoyed this. I might subject other friends to this series in the future because it was a very fun ride.
It's like the clunkiest series I think I've ever watched start to finish, but I think there's something incredibly charming about it.
Yeah, I'm glad we watched all of these because I know there's some series where I'm like, I could have done without that, but this is a good journey, and I thank you for coming with me.
Of course, of course. To take us out, I'll give my ranking. My ranking. I love the Howling Five. What can I say?
Yeah.
Having a bunch of Agatha Christie characters getting killed off one by one. That's my thing. You know what I mean? Howling
Good time.
5. My next one is Howling 2, because like just Sierra's so great.
She's an icon.
Howling Reborn is probably my number 3 for sure.
A
Then I'll come in with the Howling, the OG Howling. I would say, okay, I'm gonna give Freaks a higher rating, not because I liked it more, but because it's an actual Howling movie. Then I'm gonna rank 7, Howling 7, because I just hated marsupials, so that is dead last. I didn't have a good time at all. I was extremely confused.
It was a very strange, you know.
Yeah, it was the best of times. It was the worst of times. Heavy on the worst of times. So yeah, that's the Howling. What are we doing next, Evelyn?
I can't say, but it's a well-known franchise that might leave you in stitches. That's my 1950s TV show horror hosts joke. But
Excellent.
So yeah, we'll see you next time for a whole new franchise.
Woo! Ow!
Ow!
We get one last howl out.
Yeah, gotta. Hey everyone, Evie here. If you enjoyed today's episode of Movies After Midnight, consider giving us the old like and subscribe so that you can stay up to date when we drop new episodes. If you didn't enjoy today's episode of Movies After Midnight, consider following me on one of the many social media platforms out there and leaving criticisms or strongly worded hate speech. Either way, thanks for tuning in. Hopefully I'll see you next time.